Startups get the party, startups get the party started. Startups get the party, startups get the party started. You want tech and tacos, tacos and tech, you know we got it, eh? Startups get the party, startups get the party started. Startups get the party, startups get the party started. Startups get the party, startups get the party started. You want tech and tacos, tacos and tech, you know we got it, eh?
And welcome back to the Tacos and Tech podcast. I'm your host, Neal Bloom, and I'm thrilled to have on Jesse Taylor, Senior Manager of Identity and Middleware Services at UNLV. Hey, Jesse, thanks for joining the pod.
Yeah, how's it going? Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Especially connecting the Vegas tech community. We're coming off of the Top Tech Awards Vegas from last year, which congratulations on
Thank you very
being
much.
a Top Tech Award recipient, which we'll talk about a little bit, what that means to you personally. But we just love to be able to shine a spotlight on technical leaders here. And so that's what's really fun about Tacos and Tech podcast and the Top Tech Awards, by the way, right? I mean, it's kind of a group that doesn't get to meet together, your peers in other industries, as well as kind of celebrate holding the whole back of the world together, to a certain regard. So it's fun to talk about. But yeah, thanks again for being on, and looking forward to getting to know your background a little bit. Why don't you take us back to that a little bit? Where did it all begin? Because I know you've got a background that I would say is off nominal for a technical leader to a certain regard, right?
A little bit. It's weird. It all started like I remember very vividly being very young, and my dad had an Atari 4200.
Mm.
So if you remember those, it's basically the one that has the keys that are kind of like pressed into the unit itself and cartridges. I remember playing Space Invaders and going, "This is really cool. Like I want to know more about this." And as time went on, not to go too far back and age me too much, but got into Apple IIbs very young as well. So big 5.5 quarter-inch floppies, Oregon Trail, which is
Oh yeah.
best game ever. Um,
Yeah.
and then all through middle school, high school, and starting into college, I started kind of finding out ways to learn more about tech. I started building my own computers. When I was 14, I worked in a small computer shop in Napa, California, where I'm originally from, building computers. I got to help out with a few wineries, which is really kind of cool. Um, but from that point on, I knew how to tear a computer apart and put it back together, which is fantastic for skills for moving on to my career. Um, After I got out of high school and started college, I decided that I was going to be an MIS major, and started working at Apple retail. So this is 2001, and in 2001, I helped open Apple Store Fashion Show, which is the first Apple store in the state actually. Actually, it was the first. It was the first one in the state. Yeah. I think the one up in Reno might have been a little bit afterwards, but and then from there, I worked there for 4 or 5 years, and then I ended up I left right before the iPhone was launched, so it was all about the iPod era, which is really kind of cool stuff. Did some system administration work for the Art Institutes, and then also for Vegas.com, which was a big travel company, but also was a conglomerate of other companies at that time. Now it's different, but that had all the Greenspan Corporation companies in it. So I worked for the Greenspan Media Group and did some things with did some Apple administration for Macintosh administration for them, because it was kind of my wheelhouse. Um, and then from there, went and worked for Fontainebleau Resorts, which is the one in Miami Beach. Did some work for them, and also the one here in Vegas. This is back 10 years ago. And then after that, I did some. I actually was chief technology officer for Niche Media Holdings and Green Gale Publishing, which was in Los Angeles. That'd be Los Angeles Confidential. In Miami would be Ocean Drive. In Vegas, it was Vegas. It was a magazine company all around the country. I got to rebuild the whole network from the ground up and rebuild an IT department from the ground up. It was a lot of fun, a lot of infrastructure builds. After that, I did a little bit of consulting in the Apple space, and then I found an opportunity to come serve the university. So I ended up at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas as running their identity and middleware programs with my teams to help. I wanted to help out. I thought it was a great idea. Public service is one of those things I wanted to try. And it's been super rewarding for me because I get to see how it affects people's lives and changes people's lives for the better. So it's a little
100%.
bit about me.
Yeah, amazing. It's funny to hear the different gateways that lead
Yeah.
people down a path, right? Whether it's gaming, kind of the first game that at least gets you paying attention to
Yeah.
technology. And then Apple really the first to like really engage the general consumer on
Mhm.
technology, right?
Yeah.
And have a store, right? The Apple Store is
Yeah.
just like this quintessential, literally nexus of saying, come general public, experience technology and Apple's a community. So it kind of, I mean, it's interesting, but it also really makes sense that you find these consumer next technology nexuses that powered you forward in that regard. Um, but especially the hospitality and schools have kind of been like pulled along in the
Yeah.
technology frame, right? It's, we now just take it for granted that we have a computer in our pocket at all time, but now we expect it everywhere we go, right? Like somehow
Right.
we have a wireless device, yet expect everywhere to be wireless, which takes plugs as well too. Like take me through from seeing that first Apple store around that experience when the iPhone then came out years later, yet you're still an Apple, expert in that regard. Like, what's the push pull you think for we're bringing technology to people versus vice versa, you think?
You know, the iPod was really where it started for a lot of the handheld generation, getting an idea that you could have something with you um, that was enabled you to have your entire music library with you.
Hmm.
How powerful is that? Pretty powerful to me. Um, and then you think about, well, then the iPhone was the next revolution of that, of having, hey, I have now an internet communicator and I have email with me, I have my webs with me, and eventually you get apps. And those apps connect to your entire world. So it's kind of the natural conclusion of, hey, now we're moving to the app economy. We're moving to the fact that we have an iPhone that can basically access anything I need it to access, or an Android device too, not forget our Android folks. Um, and the idea that those experiences are now almost expected, right? You go into a resort or something like that. It's like, why isn't my phone talking to the room, or should my phone be talking to the room? I should be able to order a room service from my phone, or I should be able to do X, Y, Z from my phone for the resort or interact with it. And I think some resorts have capitalized on that. And I'm not talking about anyone in particular. Some resorts do other features like check-in and stuff like that. I think it's really important to see how that consumer facing, hey, hey, I got this stuff and it's mobile and it works. And it works every time, to, hey, I've got a phone in my pocket that works. And how do you build that with those type of applications? How do you build that interface for modern life? And I think we're seeing a lot of that. I think we're also seeing a lot of that predictability coming from um, all this data that's being collected by all these organizations and then being used to help build collaborative AI agents that are also helping garden that experience or curate that experience. It's from putting a 5.5 quarter floppy in an Apple II and turning on and watching it take a few minutes to boot up, and then being excited and watching green and black graphics on a screen, on a screen, to being able to watch full 4K movies on my phone, no matter where I am. It's really it's a modern marvel that we're at this point, and it's amazing to see where we're going to go next with that. I see a very bright future in that regard.
Totally. Well, we'll get into some like
Yeah,
predictions around that, but to a certain degree, from a technology owner, you know, yes, the end user consumer sees maybe less, but you actually
yeah,
still own the whole stack. Like just
yeah,
because the
yeah,
person doesn't have to put the floppy in, that file still has to sit on your server somewhere,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so it actually kind of compounds on the technology owner to do more. Does it feel that way? Because it seems that when you kind of pull back and say, hey, look, at the end of the day, you still need to deliver content to someone's device, regardless of how you do it.
I think there is, not to steal something from Joe Biden, but an inflection point on that, right? We used to have used to front load everything. You have to have everything loaded up in memory and get everything rolling. And then as as time moved on, then it was hosted somewhere, either private in the private cloud or on premises or locally. And then it
Mhm.
became more of a, then you start having cloud infrastructures that were hosting some of that content and some of that loading. And I
Mhm.
think so, although that whole infrastructure stack kind of got moved off the device and moved out to somewhere else to run virtually somewhere else and then be displayed on the device. So the device almost is the carrier at that point. But I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think your modern iPhone for a couple of years, from 10 years ago, was more powerful than most of the spacecraft that we had in NASA at that point in juncture. So I think it's interesting to see how you have that much power still in in the palm of your hand in a phone or a device or tablet, but it's this whole backing infrastructure that's also there to be leveraged. And how powerful is that? I mean, that's crazy.
Apply that to the education space. Like what has been different
Sure.
going, from hospitality now to education? Like, what are the different needs, on end users and the technology stack that you power there?
So when you look at, so my role at the university is identity and access management. So we make sure that the right person gets to the right resource at the right time, and they're authorized to do so by the role that they have or the role their entity has at the university. And so that whole infrastructure is SaaS based. We actually had a big project where we moved from an on-premises identity access management system that we had. It was huge during the pandemic. We moved it to actually to a SaaS based identity provider. And that identity provider does all the heavy lifting in regards to the coding and the servers and the resources, and it's utility based. And what that's enabled us to do is focus more on the end user experience and focus more on ensuring that the stuff that we're building around applications for access, the users that we're provisioning, is not only more accessible to the end user because it works better than it had before, but it's more secure and it's always updated. That's a cool thing about some SaaS providers is that patches are rolled out as they need to be rolled out, and it's done in a modular fashion, so you don't have to worry so much about their downtime is very little because it's all done modularly. And so applying that type of back from before I got there, and this is way before I got there, so I'm not saying I changed this, but there's physical servers, file servers, and corners of the university doing things, um, and that's all been modernized. We still have quite a bit of stuff on site for research and stuff like that, but as time moves on and we keep shifting and looking at different areas to explore in regards to hosting with other providers, or maybe building our own capacity, or building using newer technologies like Kubernetes or Docker and stuff like that to help manage our workloads. um, it's almost the same thing over again. Like, there's a friend of mine once told me that we went from mainframes to personal computer, and then we went from personal computer back to servers and the internet, which is cloud, right? And then we kind of
Mhm.
went back. So it's kind of like this pendulum that keeps swinging back and forth. And so I see the same thing happening with educational technology. You have some things on site, some things that are hosted in the cloud, and that's or server or privately hosted somewhere. It's a hybrid approach, really. I think that's kind of where we've all ended up in the consumers, right? It's a hybrid approach. Your phone has local content, and it has content on a server somewhere. It's being hosted.
True. The one big overarching piece around it is the kind of the security aspect,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And a school with tens of thousands of end users, you've got
yeah.
tens of thousands of endpoints that, you have to kind of like, you can't just teach them, here's how to respond to emails kind of thing. Like, how does the security layer kind of play into all that?
So our CISO, Vito Rocco, is really good at what he does, and he has a really great program that he runs with for training our end users and our staff members at least on what to look out for and phishing emails and stuff like that, and faculty. And then when it comes to students, our help desk is extremely helpful in making sure that our students are aware of to be safe online. But when it comes to my role in all of that, the identity access platform is designed to ensure that I'll give you an example of this. So, um, when 5, 6 years ago, we didn't have multi-factor authentication in a lot of our stuff, because higher ed was a little resistant. In my opinion, it was a little resistant to that type of two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, and we actually were able to implement a MFA program right after the pandemic with the majority of our students. And at the time, we had both app-based, token-based. You could have a token generated on your phone, or you can have a push notification to an app on your phone, or you can have a YubiKey, or you could have an SMS text message. And we just recently last year said, hey, SMS isn't the safest thing anymore. It used to be. It's really not. And we're able to actually work with our community, our students, faculty, and staff, and through the help of our client services desk, and through the help of our marketing team and our strategic communications team, enterprise systems, we're able to really figure out a way to work with campaigning. Hey, we're going to move you guys if you're on SMS, let's move you to the Verify app that we have. And Verify, in that way you get a push notification to your phone, or if you have an Apple Watch, this is really, again, this goes back to technology, right? Wearable. When I log into my application or whatever I'm logging into, because my watch is attached to my phone, the app actually works on here, so I can just hit yes on my watch, and I'm off to the races. And surprisingly, that was like the coolest thing people liked. The thing people really loved about that. They had their wearable tech on, and their wearable tech was able to authenticate them to a resource. Username and password still, but I mean, and I really kind of was taken aback by the first time I heard someone pretty high up in the organization say, "Hey, that's the best way. I love that. It's so easy," versus them having to look for their phone and look through the stuff. And so I think as we move on and tech moves on and we keep moving forward, we're going to see more stuff like that, where it's a lot easier to authenticate and not have to have passwordless is the next big thing that I want to push for. We'll see how far we get, depending on the way things roll with the adoption of that. But I want to go to passwordless or passkeys, and we actually already have those enabled, but it's not the type that everybody's used to. Like, and what I mean by that is, if you've ever logged into a Microsoft stack of some type, you get the passkey for them is basically you put your username in, and it asks you for the passkey. In the current system I have, it'll let you use any type of passkey you want, but it doesn't mimic that style. And that's coming soon. So I'm hoping to get that enabled soon, because I think I want to be able to push that forward and get rid of passwords at the university next, but also some endpoint configuration, so that we're able to actually say, hey, this is a trusted device on a trusted network, and start doing some zones. We do a little bit of that already, but it's really about the in fact, I won't go into how much we do of that. Actually, we do a lot, but I won't talk too much about it because it's about the posture. But we really want to make it easier for the end user, and so the more of stuff like the Apple Watch or Android Watch, the more of maybe a beacon or a ring that has an NFC in it that allows us to talk to our stacks, that actually is hosted in the cloud. Doesn't matter where you are, it works. One interesting thing about education technologies, we have researchers, and sometimes they're not connected to anything.
Yeah.
So they're having to be out in the middle of nowhere and find a way to do things. And luckily, a lot of our apps and a lot of our authentication protocols can cache themselves, or they can have their way to let you have temporary access while you're offline. But I also think with the advent of satellite-based internet access, so some of the big ones out there definitely helps with that as well. Push the needle forward. I think the satellite connected phone stuff is going to be revolutionary. That's just me being a little like looking glass,
Yeah.
out there. We'll see how it actually does. But I think that's pretty cool. For example, my dad actually lives in the middle of Elko, Nevada, way up north. And he's on a point-to-point wireless system, so he can get broadband to his house out there. And it's really
Like
cool.
satellite dish for
Oh,
internet.
no. This is crazier than that. So it goes from one city to you basically think it's about ubiquity point to point. So it goes wireless um to a repeater that's running off solar batteries, that goes to another repeater that's running off solar batteries, that's going to where he is. So it's basically a point to point, and there's multiple customers working off of it. And
Wow.
it's 5 milliseconds. latency. It's amazing how well that works.
Wow.
But of course, if there's a storm up there, it snows. Oh. So we've been talking about, do we want to do satellite up there for him instead? But right now
Yeah.
it's working for him. So anyway, I got off
Yeah.
tangent,
Super
but
interesting. No, no, it's awesome. My brain goes to like, well, this is a great use for Starlink, but I'm
yeah.
sure
Yeah.
all
Oh, it
the other
totally is. Yeah,
too,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Interesting. I love, obviously, you've continued to lean into Apple leading the way on identity management with the wearable. I mean, a lot of
yeah,
us on Apple laptops have gotten used to the fingerprint in place of
yep,
password, and obviously unlocking our phone with Face
yeah.
ID, right? So all that makes sense that that's what you lean into. Is that app or is that the big OEMs pushing that way and saying, well, they've already established a consumer way of accessing? Or, I mean, you saying a ring with an NFC feels, no, that feels like you leading and coming up with kind of new ways,
That
barriers.
that yeah, the NFC is kind of, it's just an idea that I've had, or a card that's got an NFC on it. But I think that's all possible. It's all in the realm of the possible. The OEMs, I don't, since we got standards like WebAuthn that allow us to do interactions like that securely and safely, some of the things that researchers are coming up with, I go to some conferences for internet too and watch what those folks are up to in other countries and here in the States and what other universities have done. There is some pretty interesting stuff being done with wearables, but also just like having a card in your pocket that you tap.
Mhm.
That's been around for years though. They've been
Sure.
able to do that with sun rays and Solaris and all that good stuff,
Yeah.
and Apple and Mac and Windows can do that too. But so I'll give you an example. So our stack is Okta, so that's what we use in the back end.
Mhm.
And the Okta Verify app has a companion app for the Apple Watch, and so that's why I think there's the Android one too. That's
Mhm.
why it links, because you basically set up your authenticator on your phone, and then your watch is like, hey, I'm a trusted partner. So it goes, and I find it interesting the way that and I think this is how this works. Don't quote me on this. But when you attach the watch to your wrist and you type in your passcode, I believe that's what causes the authentication effect. Like it knows it's you. And that's how you're able to authenticate that. I think that's
Mhm.
the rationale behind that.
Yeah.
Again, don't quote me, but it's kind of cool to see that. I mean, I think that we're going to see more and more of that. I wouldn't be surprised if one day. I mean, we've already seen it like the Amazon Go stores, right, where you walk in and you can walk out with merchandise. They have one at Harry International right now. Actually, I got the chance to finally try it, and I remember I picked up one of the soda or something, I was walking out. The person's like, "Hey, there's somebody still in there. Hey, have a nice day." And I'm like, "Oh, I forgot to get some chips." And pick up the chips. She's like, "Well, hold on, you have to go back." So I screwed it up basically, but
That is your role to break the system a little bit, and
a
push
little
the
bit,
boundaries a little bit.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, so cybersecurity is super important. We want to protect our students, faculty, and staff. We want to make sure that whatever they're working on is secure, and having multi-factor authentication is really important.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
that
that's one of the big projects we had.
And that kind of sets the stage for, we can't have a tech conversation without mentioning AI, obviously, right? The world is awash with like just tons of new tools that everyone is
Yeah.
trying all the time, right? And so got to know like any new fun generative AI tools that you're using, I don't know, maybe in your personal or professional life, they're just kind of helping you on a day-to-day area.
So in a personal life, um, I like to use it to help me to basically storyboard and sketch out ideas. So, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and here's the variables, and here's my back. I find it kind of interesting because 10 years ago we were talking about big data. You remember the conversation on big data? And now you can take those big data sets that were taking forever to parse through and drop them all into a large language model and say, hey, I have all this data. Do you see a trend? Hey, I have all this data. Do you see, um, by the way, I'm thinking about doing this. How would that work against this data that I collected against this scenario? And granted, we have to be careful of it hallucinating and saying things that aren't true. We have to trust but verify. That's a big thing. Um, I find it helpful for that help, but I use it a lot also for helping me proofread things. I would say and that's Apple's got Apple Intelligence built into it. I've got ChatGPT set up, some other things. So personally, um, we have to be very careful about it when it comes to the university and students and faculty and staff because of privacy and data and making sure that we're not putting things into AI that we shouldn't be putting into AI. And so, working on building out policies like that around that are important. And I think a lot of companies are like, Microsoft's got Copilot, right? Which is almost integrated into everything. It looks like when I logged into Windows laptop, I'm an Apple user, obviously, a Windows laptop, and Copilot and is right there. Hey, I'm here. It's like great. I don't need that right now, but it's how powerful that will be for folks to say, hey, I'm building an Excel spreadsheet. I want to build this formula. How do I do this? And it's like, hey, by the way, you can do it better this way. That's cool stuff. That's productivity and that's collaboration. I like to refer to a term that I'd heard before, which is called collaborative intelligence. Like the idea is that we're working with the AI. The AI isn't working to replace people. That's super important to me to look at it that way. And I almost don't. I don't want to say that on a podcast, but I feel like the word AI has a very strong science fiction um, uh, set of accoutrements to go along it with it, and collaborative intelligence sounds more like, hey, it's there to kind of help me. It's like you know, I believe this is attributed to Steve Jobs. A computer is a bicycle for the mind, right? So AI is like a race car. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And I
so,
think Microsoft naming it Copilot is smart in that. It
oh,
is
absolutely. Yeah.
but it also right now is acting like Clippy, right? Which is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, great, I get it, you're there, but I don't need you right now. And it needs to inject itself and say, hey, here's where I can be helpful into what you're
Right.
doing as a pure co-pilot. I guess it's the sense of agency. That's the difference right now.
Yeah.
We have to go push to pull the things we need, as opposed to it saying, hey, here are three ideas to, make what you just did more efficient. So you don't have to like
Yeah.
take your time away and stop your brain power from that. So I hear you for sure. And that's why, AI being this two-letter word now, it's like, we're unfortunately whitewashing a little bit
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
of all the power that it's doing behind the scenes. Because all the things you just mentioned are so many different like deep
Yeah.
dive, right? Just the data side itself. Data infrastructure, data engineering, that wasn't even a world of study before 10 years ago, right? To a certain regard. And all these roles of data analyst, data engineer, all that. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, the first time I heard prompt engineer, I'm like, prompt engineer, really? But that's it's a thing, and I'm just like, is that really that's a thing? And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Somebody who knows the ins and outs of the large language model to be able to make it perform at its peak. How cool is
Totally.
that? Yeah,
Yeah. So in a sense, like tech is just, I think to a certain regard, all of us are just expecting it to do
yeah,
the things that we need to do behind the scenes. Uh, but really, the unbundling of a lot of it, right? Whether it's on-prem cloud and then everything that comes with it, and then the intelligence stack on top of it,
yeah.
just in a sense gives you a lot more responsibility and you have to have a lot more different teams to build in that regard. Which kind of leads us to the Top Tech Awards, which is this opportunity to take everything that's happening behind the scenes and give it a spotlight and say, here are it's not just tech talking to tech. There are people who are making all
Yeah.
of this happen. So, Top Tech Vegas is actually pretty new in that regard, and to get nominated and actually awarded in the first few years is pretty great in that shirt. So, congrats. What did
Thank
it
you.
mean to you to kind of get this award for you?
I actually had a little suspicion that something might be going on in regards to getting the award. A little bit, not much. But it hit me pretty hard when I said, hey, I saw a video of me up running on the screen. I'm like, I remember shooting that a couple of years ago for some other project, and it's being and so I was like, no wonder I didn't know anything about this. And it was awesome to be recognized. It was awesome my team got recognized. It's really important that I'm huge into making sure the folks that work with me are recognized for their contributions. I mean, we have a very small team in regards to identity and access management. We have a very small team for middleware. And they put a lot of hours and time into making things successful for our students, faculty, and staff. And the fact that we got, the recognition, um, really was amazing because it felt like, okay, we're folks are being seen. And how cool is that we're being seen and being recognized for some of the things that keep the lights on, and it's hard to, and a lot of times, IT has that old adage that's kind of the unsung heroes, right? It's the folks that if everything's working, you know, that means they're doing everything's great. But the second something goes sideways, there can be, it's like, well, what's going on? It's like, well, we've been doing this massive project for 6 months to do this, and XYZ happened. But we had a great, it was a great experience. I'm very happy of the group of people that were. I got one in education. There was several others who got awards as well. Really cool seeing other people in Southern Nevada that got the award, and the people that had received the award beforehand, actually, as well as seeing them in the audience cheer us on, is fantastic as well. So I think it's a great event. It has a great purpose, and I hope to see it continue for many more years to come.
Yeah, agreed. Likewise, to especially be, nominated by your peers and then judged to a certain regard by your peers is pretty powerful in that regard. And I know one, nominations are open now for the next year.
Yeah.
So hopefully everyone listening is submitting their favorite technical leader for that. But to a certain regard, it, like you mentioned about it's your team. What do you think is kind of your role in shaping your team as the future top tech award winners and really technical leaders in this space?
I've always believed in developing my team members and helping them reach their goals. Um, a lot of times, sitting down, just getting willing to know people that are on my team and what they're, and you learn naturally strengths and where there needs some opportunities for improvement, and you learn how to help them, uh, you know, be the best that they can be in that role. And sometimes it's like, hey, I want to try something else, or I want to move forward and do more, or hey, I want to become a leader myself. And I love working with them and helping them get training and working with them individually on their projects and showing them how things can be done, how to move things forward. And I really think, um, making sure they're taken care of in that regard is really important, because even if the answer is, hey, it's, yeah, I really want to go to this instead, it's like, how can I support you in doing this? And I find that people are very positive around the development help, because it's like, okay, this guy, this leader really wants to make sure that we're performing well as a team. um, I'm gonna put my best foot forward. And I find it happens a lot more when you're involved with developing and training. Um, but also making sure that I'm there when things, make sure to back up my team when things don't go the way they're supposed to. That's a huge part of being an authentic leader. Um, I'm 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 big into authentic leadership. That's one of my things that I would like to harp on, because it's, you have to not only be the leader, but you have to actually also, um, embolden what that actual term actually means.
100%. Show up, first of all, to a certain regard, but also, yeah, be the change,
Yeah.
but also like lead by doing. And I think it's super important where you work. I mean, you work in education, which is the starting point for so many
Yeah.
people's careers, right? You're getting to see kind of this raw talent to a certain degree, get shined and honed, in the university space. So is that like, what kind of advice do you give to people around where to go forth and start down maybe a technical path might be good for them?
I think it really depends on what your goals are. But if you're just getting started, find something that looks interesting, give it a try, and see if it makes sense. If it starts, and learn more about it. But if you're at university level, CS or MIS are great career paths to go down. Um, you know, but also outside of that, and I say this very cautiously, because of where I work. I also believe in apprenticeships. I also believe, so my other background is other hat, switch hats real quick so I don't get in
Yeah.
trouble. Is I'm the chair of the Society for Information Management, Las Vegas, which is there's a San Diego chapter, but I'm the Las Vegas chapter president, chair rather. and we really support workforce development programs. And so one of our things that we like to do is give back to the community. So we actually have a golf tournament every year where we do that. We actually get some proceeds from that, from some sponsors, and give back to not only the universities and colleges, but also some technology starting programs where you go and learn how to be a programmer. You learn how to go to be to do technology work. I'm a huge believer in both paths. It doesn't really so there is, I guess the answer I have is technology is such a wide expanse that there's multiple ways to get to where you want to go. You know, colleges and universities are obviously the preferred path for me, but that doesn't mean it is for everyone. So
100%. Yeah, and I think in this changing world, there's so many new roles that are going to be created, empowered with technology that, I think we're just starting to see all the different new career paths when you embrace technology as a co-pilot. So we will see.
Right.
And I'm sure you will find new ways to both help mentor and, be a leader within those communities. So thanks for that. We have to end every podcast with, and the audience demands this at this point, favorite taco spot. Do you have one in Vegas, or is it elsewhere, somewhere you travel through? Like, where do you go to chop it up?
So my favorite taco spot is it's actually a fajita place. So it's Flaming Juan's Fajita and Cantina. Awesome tacos. Place is always packed. There's a couple of locations in Vegas, but they make a fantastic fajitas, but they also make fantastic tacos. I usually just like either beef and a chicken taco are good enough for me. So that's my favorite place in town.
Okay, good to add it to our taco database, which we do have and visualized. I imagine, I'm a big fajitas fan. I imagine like a fajita taco would sound great. Like everything grilled separately and then added to tortilla. Oh man, that gets me hungry. So looks like
lots of different salsa options, all the different types you think that would be there. And you just know the food's good, and you keep going back, and it keeps like there's that kind of restaurant where you're sitting outside and the line keeps getting longer outside. It's one of those.
Love it. That's always a good sign. That's for sure. We'll have to come chop it up sometime and have some fajitas. Jesse, thank you so much for spending the time, but even more, thanks for being an authentic leader. Thanks for leading the change, both technically, but in people that are going to be, empowering all of us to just take it for granted that we're all just connected. And that is real leadership, I would say, in that regard, right? Which is keep the lights on at all times and be the people behind the scenes. So thanks for spending the time with us, and thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you for having me, Neal. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
Startups get the party started. Startups get the party. Startups get the party started. You want tech and tacos, tacos and tech. You know we got tacos and tech is on smash. For the green guacamole. Keep accountants counting beans. Contador cuentan frijoles. Founders trying to raise some queso. La vida San Diego. School of rapping fire. Tortillas round jalapenos. In these modern times of craft beer and coffee. My coding yoga posse. Fold the body. Origami. We be surfing Coronado. Eating tacos el gordo. The taco stand in puesto. Lucha libre and sombrero. Gotta shout out Tecos Daniels by the ocean. Watch the sunset. La Jolla Shores. Entrepreneurs trying to get funded. When San Diego Startup Week is popping in the summer. Oceanside to Tijuana. SD be full of hustlers. From couch surfing to penthouses right on the beach. Tech leaders who believe stars are within reach. We interviewing founders who be shooting for the moon. Hashtag SD Techos with your host, Neal Bloom. Come on! Startups get the party. Startups get the party started. Startups get the party. Startups get the party started. Startups get the party. Startups get the party started. You want tech and tacos, tacos and tech. You know we got it. Hey. Startups get the party. Startups get the party started. Startups get the party. Startups get the party started. Startups get the party. Startups get the party started. You want tech and tacos.